Welcome to Open with Alex, where every episode is a journey into diverse perspectives and compelling stories. I'm your host, Alex, and together we'll explore the depth of the human experience. Get ready to open up to new insights and inspirations with each guest. Let's dive in. Joining us today is Erika Obando, TEDx speaker, author, and master certified life coach, a founder and CEO of TPE Coaching and Consulting. Erika guides individuals to rewrite their life stories. She inspires audiences to embrace their power and purpose. Hello, Erika. I can't believe we're here today. I'm so happy you're here in my podcast.
I know. I can't believe it either.
I can't believe it. So only 6 years ago, I was sitting down with Erika in her office. We used to work together. And Erika is not only a professional colleague, but also a very good friend of mine. And we were talking about it, and she told me a little bit about her story. And I said to her, I meet so many amazing people like you with crazy, amazing survival stories and going through obstacles and becoming who you are today. And I remember saying, I have to do something. I know I have to interview you. I have to share the message. And that's kind of how, and she goes, yeah, I think you have to. And here I am. It's been taking a while to develop all of these podcasts. Being we're in marketing and production, I really wanted to do it right, and I promised you'll be in the group of my first few guests. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. I want to share your story here today. I know we could sit here for hours.
Yes.
We have so much in common, and we never have enough time to talk to each other. But I want to start this podcast on, please tell me who Erika was and then who Erika is.
Wow.
So tell me a little bit about the Erika that you told me when you first moved to this country, and so many things have happened. We'll go little by little. But please tell me about the Erika that I didn't know. I know through your books and your stories.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've never been asked that. You literally just shook my body because who Erika was, I immediately started thinking, I'm like, oh my God, who was that person? But man, I'll start out by saying that I used to be an afraid person. I used to be a person that didn't have a voice. I went through so many things in my life that I guess positioned me to be where I am now, but had I known back then, right? I will share a little bit, which is that I am from Medellin, Colombia. I was born there when I was 5 years old. As a very typical story, my family decided that they wanted something better than the unrest that we were living in our own country. And so they embarked in their journey to come to the United States for that, infamous American dream. And so I was smuggled into this country at 5 years old in search of that dream. And we started our journey or our life in New Jersey, and in very, very short order, because we were here undocumented, we were deported back to Colombia, which is where they were saying, this is your country, so you get to go back to Colombia. So at 8 years old, that's where I was.
I remember, just so we go back to your book, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, but I remember when she was writing the book, it was everything very raw, and she said, oh, can you read this manuscript and tell me what you think? And it's this thick manuscript about her life. And I'm like, sure, I'll read it, and then I'll get it home. And I go, first chapter is her childhood. We're going back to her childhood. And then second chapter, and my heart sunk, and I couldn't read anymore. I had to wait. And she texted me, have you read? What do you think about the book? And it's been a few weeks. And I'm like, I couldn't continue reading at after the very beginning, because it was really hard for me to understand what you've been through knowing you today. So Tell me a little bit about that. You said you literally had to be smuggled twice to the country.
Correct.
And then you grew up in what it felt like a very difficult home environment. So tell me about that.
So to pick up where I left off, my parents tried, my dad in particular, tried to make the best out of going back and, getting a job in Colombia and doing all that. But again, the country was still where he left it. And so he had to make the second hardest decision of his life, which is, this isn't working. And I know that we got kicked out the first time, but we got to go back. It's the only way that I'm going to be able to provide for my family. And so, fast forward, I am a surviving child of having crossed the Mexican border the second time.
How old were you?
I was almost 9 years old at that time. And so we came through the Mexican border. We actually were arrested, and you have to read the book.
I was gonna say
you have to read the book for the details.
So that people read the book, because there is a couple of really good, powerful stories during that time when you crossed the border.
Yeah, that trend.
So I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, that journey in itself is empowering for the reader, and it was actually empowering for me. It was a very healing component, because it gives you a perspective of where you've been and what do you do with that, right? And as we get into what I do today and who I am today, I always say that, you can stay the victim of your story. I mean, everybody comes from one. What do we do with what happens to us, right? But the concept and the idea here is, how do you transform that into the hero story? And because for a very long time in the beginning of my life, I was handed that victim ticket right here. You're a victim. You're a victim. And as a child, you don't know anything else but to take it. Okay, I'm going to take that ticket and put it in my pocket. I am a victim to this story, but it gets exhausting. And so at some point I decided, wait a second, what if I rewrote this story? And so in the process of having come to this country twice, the hardships that entails with an immigrant family, right? Not knowing English, trying to fit in, trying to get your documentation so you could rightfully work and support for your family, there was a lot of turbulence at home, right? And so there was severe depression and a lot of traumatic experiences. And in that space, I kind of took the brunt of it as the oldest child. And so at 14, during a very, very difficult, challenging time in my life, particularly with my mom, I decided I had to leave the home. And so I've lived on my own since I was 14. And I can share my age if that's okay. But
no. So wait. Before you tell me about leaving your house. On that time, that's a key question in this podcast that I ask. What was the lowest or the most traumatic experience that you think you had? And what was it that made you jump out to recover and dust yourself off and say, okay, I'm moving out? What do you think was that force?
Well, another question I've never been asked.
I do my homework, and I know you're in double trouble.
So we are brought up to believe, and society tells us that our parents are our biggest cheerleaders, our supporters, our foundation, right? And in my particular case, I didn't have that. And I was always in search of it, and I didn't have that. And my lowest point was when my mom said to me that I was not going to be anybody. I was not going to, I wasn't meant for greatness.
That was your lowest point.
That was my lowest point, because I looked at her for her to, rise me as opposed to bringing me down. And when she said to me, you're never going to be anybody, when you look at her, and I was young, I was 14. So I'm looking at her like, first of all, how do you know that? And that was my balance, right? That was my lowest point. But then immediately something inside of me said, how does she know that? Like, how does she know what I'm capable of?
You know what? I get emotional listening to you because I read so many things that happened to you at that time that it's very emotional for me to understand that it was words that hurt you the most.
Exactly.
I get chills just thinking about it.
Well, it's the power of it. And people, I wish people knew how powerful words are. They can break you or they can change you. But again, in that particular case for me, it broke me as a child.
Wow.
But it empowered me as a woman, as a young woman at that. And that's when that kind of that grit came up and said, what if I could prove her wrong? So the words that she gave me broke me, but it also questioned my own fierceness inside. And I said, what if I could prove her wrong? And that was when I left, because I set my sails out to say, I'm going to prove her wrong.
So you were defiant.
Yes, but I think in a good way, right?
Yeah.
I was defiant because I was like, I'm going to set out to prove her wrong. She can't possibly know what I'm capable of doing or becoming. And I don't know what to say, but
In the journey, because then you have been through, put yourself in a house with nuns. You want to tell me a little bit about that? Because I think that also turned you into faith and more spirituality than you were used to. So I want to hear a little bit about that period.
So I was brought up Catholic, but I called the dietetic Catholic, right? We eat some of it, but we don't eat some of it, right? We weren't like extremely religious, but I started questioning my faith in that process, because I'm like, if there's a God out there, why is this happening to me? Why is he allowing all this? But it was funny enough that when I left at 14, the people that opened the doors for me were a house of nuns that they provided a home for women that were either coming off of domestic violence situations. They couldn't afford regular rent, and so I think the rent was $100. And so a month, these women would be there, but with the one condition that you had to understand what family was. We were all family. As broken as we were all family, and we were all going to heal each other. So that's where I lived for 2 years. They welcomed me in, and when I look back, it was the foundation that I needed. I have built everything myself, my mothering title with my son, my relationship, everything that I built off of the foundation that I created with the help of those nuns in those 2 years that I lived there.
So being that, without giving away the book, being that you were a victim of physical abuse, sexual abuse, that you went through so much in your childhood, how do you feel about living in an environment with other victims? Is that the first time you realized you're a victim, when you moved into that place, and now you have a family of people that are victims?
No. I realized I was a victim much later in my life, but it's funny because some people that are hurt other people. Yes. Some people that are hurt want to heal everybody, right? And so I went in the opposite direction. Whenever I would come across somebody that had gone through something, I would tuck away my own hurt to help heal somebody else. And I found strength in that, right? Because I was like, we'll deal with my stuff later, but let me help her because she looks like she needs some help right now. And so in that process of helping others heal, like a little bit of me started healing, right? Because that's a good feeling. Like I said, there are people who are hurt that they find that strength in hurting others. But I went the other direction. I don't know why. It was in me to do that.
That's an achievement itself. So I want to fast forward. There's so much to the story. I want to fast forward. I know that you actually, many years later, reunite with some of these nuns.
Yes.
And that was also very important for you and very emotional for you. And you've been through so much. And then you had a career, you get married, you have a child. And fast forward now to maybe the last 10 years. What do you think has become that most powerful force of healing other people? Because that's what we're going to talk about later, which is how you became now. But what do you think was that force that made you realize this is what I want to do? Did this happen 10 years ago? You were a mom. When do you think is that shift?
Well, I wanted to go back to that because I think my transformational moment came when I became a mom. Right, and that was in a few weeks. It'll be 26 years ago, which I still can't believe it.
Me neither.
I say that and my back hurts all of a sudden. It's like,
No,
wow,
me
26
neither.
years. So 26 years ago, I became a mom for the first time. And that was the moment that was pivotal for me to understand that it's not going to be about me anymore. It's about pouring myself into a human being that's looking at me like, you brought me here. Can you love me? Can you show me? Can you teach me? Can you, right? Everything that we do as a parent. That moment for me was my aha moment. Like, oh my goodness, now I have this human being that I can teach and curate to eventually deliver to society. And for me, that was huge, becoming a mom.
I think becoming a parent, and nothing against people that don't have kids. Some people have pets or parents that they have to take care of. But becoming a caretaker of another being changes your compassion and your point of view on how you handle yourself or what you can do for them. So that's a good thing that it was motherhood that did it for you.
Yeah.
And then how does that all become the snowball that it has become in the last 26 years?
Well, I always had, and we all do, by the way, in the work that I do, I tell everybody, we all have this calling in our stomach. And that calling in our stomach is our purpose. And some of us shut it up because we got to work to pay the bills, right? But some of it gets so loud, you can't hide it anymore, right? You have to pay attention to it. And for me, it happened a few years back where I said, what is this that won't go away? What is it that I'm supposed to do? And the answer very shortly came to me that I want to help people, right? And it was very generic. I want to help people. And in exploring and kind of peeling back the onion of what that looks like, I realized that I want to help people that are hurt or that have gone through some trauma, but they have a little bit of fire and they just need somebody to fan it so that they can get to where they know they want to be, and they can be, right? Going back to that whole reference of you're never going to be somebody. I want to be able to help those people that someone once told them that they weren't going to be anybody, and then guide them through that process of becoming. I think that's so important, and that's what I felt in my stomach, and that's what I started to develop to where I am now.
And what comes next? The book or your whole? I remember we talked about it was almost like a whole business plan of a program of I have all of this already planned out. But what comes next? That becomes what does Erika manifest next?
From what point?
From the point that you said, this is what I want to do. This is my calling.
So I actually started speaking about 11 years ago. Someone nominated me to speak in a women's group at that. It was a women's support group. And I do really well when I'm under pressure. And so my friend says to me, hey, I nominated you to speak and share your story. I'm like, are you crazy? I shared that over wine with you. Like, why would you nominate me? Like, that was it. And she said, well, too bad, you're going to speak in 2 weeks. And when I went to go speak, because again, I'm a Leo and I take the challenge and I'm like, watch, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
I don't know anything about Leos.
No, you don't know anything about being a Leo.
No.
So I went and I spoke, and the reaction of the audience, the reaction of the women, some women, they all lined up afterwards. We were all crying at some point. And some would come up to me and just hug me and cry with me.
This is different than your TED Talk.
Than my TED Talk. This was before my TED Talk.
So tell me about the TED Talk, because that's a cool story too. How did you end up doing the TED Talk?
Well, that I manifested it.
Oh.
That I really, truly believe I manifested it.
And if anybody wants to watch it, where do they go to watch it?
Just Google Erika Obando, or look for When Breaking Points Lead to Empowerment, which is what the TED Talk is called.
Okay. So tell me about
but speaking with those women made me realize that I had value to add to them with my own story. And then fast forward to the TED Talk, man, was that a confirmation? Because when you go into these things, you don't know what to expect. You go to a TED Talk, you go on stage, the infamous red dot, right? And then you share your story. What comes after is what's shocking and life-defining, because I didn't realize how many people it was going to affect. I didn't realize that in sharing my story, I was going to give permission to people to feel,
Empower.
to embrace their story, but then ask themselves that very question: what now? Am I going to continue to be the victim, or am I going to be victorious? So all of these different elements started kind of sprouting out of the TED Talk that there's no way you could plan for it. So for me, that was another aha moment and another confirmation that, our story builds us, but it's also our responsibility to do something with it, right? It's not the pity party. It's none of that. It's, man, we went through some stuff on purpose. And what is that purpose? So start, defining what is that. My purpose was to help others, to help empower others, to give themselves permission to embrace themselves and their story and say, okay, I got it. I went through all that, but now what?
I think I have been very curious about it, because I read, it's easier to be depressed, it's easier to be a victim,
Yes.
It is easier to drink your problems away, or drugs, or whatever it is, bad habits people pick up. It's easier. I think it's easier.
No, you don't think. It is a fact. It is easier to stay in that space because it doesn't require work. It requires you to kind of, settle in that.
So what's Erika's bounce back? You don't turn into any of those negative habits or bad behaviors or victimization, which it's sad what people do. So what's Erika's magic pill? Is it, because even as grown-ups, I've seen us both going through difficult times during COVID, relationships, things, just life, but I know that you bounce back, you jump back. So what is it? What did you turn to?
I turn to my core, right? My North Star. It's identifying my North Star. I'm here for a purpose. I'm here. And sometimes society's noise, right, takes you off track. And you're all of a sudden all the way over here. And that's when anxiety kicks in, and questioning, self-sabotage. All of that stuff happens when you're off your track, right? So what do I come back to? It's that moment of, Erika, turn the wheel and go back to your core, your North Star. My North Star is I've been very fortunate to define what my purpose in this life is, and it's to help people. It's to help guide people to live a happier life, a less stressful life, to let go of that baggage of, that book bag of rocks that I call, of your past. Let it go. It's not for you to carry it along. You're supposed to, learn through your life, not carry it.
But I also I have had conversations with you where before you go to your core, you allow yourself to feel.
Yes.
And a lot of people, victims, and I'm sure some of your coaching clients, we just, jump and, no, we're fine. We're fine. But you allow yourself to feel, you just don't stay there. Am I right? Is that part of...
That's part of taking back your power, right?
Okay.
That you have the space to take out your mess and throw it on there, right? And I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but this is exactly what I say to my clients.
Yes.
Vomiting.
Give me an appropriate. We had that before.
Vomiting is no fun. It's no fun for anything, but something caused the upset stomach, right? Something you did, something you decided to ingest, whatever it is that you're going through, right? Something caused the vomit. And it's not fun to sit there and vomit, but once you do, it's out of your system, right? It's out of your system. It's out there. You can clean it up. You can clean up the mess, but now you start to feel better. Well, your emotions are no different, right? You have to get it out of your system. There's a reason why it's bubbling up or making you feel ill, right? So get it out of your system and do what you have to do. You clean up the mess later, feel through it, clean up, and then keep moving. And I think that analogy helps people put together like a little bit of tangibles in your emotions. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it brings me to my next point, which was one of my favorite chapters in your book, and probably my favorite chapter in our friendship.
Oh.
Which is forgiveness. You had to do a lot of that in your life. You forgave a lot of mean people. So the way you describe forgiveness in your book, I don't know if you can give us a little bit of a tip, but why is it so important to forgive, and how do you forgive when somebody hurt you so much?
Well, I'll answer the first, which is why is it's important to forgive, and it's because the only person you're punishing in that process is yourself, right? You're the one holding on to it. You're the one storming through it. You're the one that's feeling that pit feeling, holding on to resentment because somebody hurt you. And I always say you have one out of two choices at any given point in any kind of challenge or situation. You either could do something about it, or you can't. And either way, you have a decision. So if you can do something about it, do something about it. If it's talking to someone, talking it through, if it's taking back your power because that person did something to you, you can't talk through them, but you have to do the inner work to let it go. Whatever that looks like, do something about it. And in some cases where you can't do anything about it because the person, whatever the situation doesn't allow you to do, let it go. If you don't have any control, like I had a conversation with someone who is afraid, petrified of death, right? And I had this conversation with this person. I said, what can you do about it? The only thing you can do about it is maybe stay healthy, do the positives that
be proactive.
Longevity to your life. Yeah. But there's nothing you could do about death. We are all going there at one point or another, some sooner, some later. Yeah. So again, tormenting yourself over something you can't control is just stealing from you from being in the now and living in today. So why? Why would you sacrifice your enjoyment today for something that you have no control over? For me, that's it. And in the book, the reason why I talk about forgiveness is because, my mom was my greatest teacher. She taught me a lot of stuff that I should not be. And she taught me a lot of things that maybe I should, question as far as being a mom, as far as being a human being, a person. But in that, she hurt me a lot when I was younger, right? And I had to forgive her through those processes, having empathy with her, knowing that somebody hurt her as well at some point. And that's where, remember, hurt people. And so you have to give compassion to that person. And I have gotten to a point where I love her from afar, I wish her well. She's not in my active life because I have to take the power back, but I hope she's okay. And in that, man, it empowers me. It's just like, wow, it makes me feel like I can do this. This is pretty cool, that I don't have to carry that inside of me, that I could say, I hope she's okay, and then now I live my today.
I never thought of forgiveness as empowerment, but it is. It's a choice. It is. So you the book comes out. In the middle of COVID, you're doing all this, I remember, back and forth, in English first,
yes,
then in Spanish. And I like I said, I know I'm moving fast because there's so much we could cover. And Erika turns into this entrepreneur that goes to events and a speaker, gets a coaching license and starts coaching, especially women, for empowerment. And Erika gets invited. She calls me to the White House. I want you to tell me about that day.
Wow.
Give me like an elevator pitch. We just met, and you're telling me that you went to the White House.
I received a phone call from a dear friend who's very involved with elevating the Hispanic community. And he had been tasked with the role of selecting 15 of South Florida, or 100 of South Florida's most notable people contributing to the community. And somehow I made his list. When he called me and told me that,
yeah.
Because when you do without expectations of anybody watching. And for me to have been selected because somebody's watching what I do, that to me was shocking. In all honesty, I couldn't believe it. I sat there and I cried and I cried and I cried. And then the other thing that I did was call my dad and thank him.
I love surprises. I actually love good surprises.
Good surprises
like that.
Are good.
I love that.
So that was a great surprise. And again, for me, what was meaningful was to call my dad and say, I'm going to the White House, but you might as well be coming with me, because had it not been for your dream and your vision way back when we were little, this wouldn't be happening. So for me, it was super important to go back and say thank you to him, and then go to the White House. I still can't believe that
That
part,
was
but
incredible.
It
That
was.
incredible.
It was to be surrounded by other Hispanic leaders that have their stories and making a difference. I felt beyond honored.
And then I know you have developed this program. I want you, after everything that life has taught you, everything that you have studied, everything that you have written, you develop a program to help not only people individually, but now a full corporation, because it is important to you that even in a company, mental health is assessed.
Yes.
Right? So tell me about how did that come about now? Because I know we're going now to your most recent developments. And I know right now, in the last few weeks, you have been given all these incredible opportunities. Mm-hmm. And it's like all coming together. So tell me about that.
Well, going back to what I said, when you listen to that gut feeling and you just start walking into that space, the opportunities show up, right? When you're in alignment with your purpose, the opportunities, the right people, the right conversations align up. And that's what's happened to me. I put it out into the universe that I wanted to help people. That's what I wanted to do. And the how, I had no idea how it was going to happen, but I just kind of started walking in that space. And in short order, I started to coach individuals, because in my speaking opportunities, my audience would come up afterwards and say, hey, you've been through some stuff. I can resonate with that. Can you help me be okay? Do you coach? And I had to ask myself, well, do I coach? But again, in those opportunities, I said, yeah, I think I could. And I started working in that space, coaching individuals one-on-one, again, to rewrite their narratives of their stories. And then a few years into it, I realized, wow, I think I tried out the corporate setting, because again, we are human beings that have, employment. So you don't leave your human being at home and go to work as a robot. You're that same person. So if there's something brewing at home and you're going to work with it, your employer is dealing with it,
yeah.
right? The effects of it.
Yeah.
And so when I started to dig into that space, I realized, I'm like, oh, I think I can help the masses, right? Because there's a lot of disengaged, people at work, and everybody's feeling the effects of it. And so that's when I started to develop TPE. TPE coaching and consulting. TPE standing for the pink elephant. We don't have to ignore the pink elephant, which is the wellness conversation anymore. Give it to me. Let me help you with the solutions to get your team re-engaged and transforming the effects of stress into the fuel that fires their productivity. So that's kind of what I started to develop, and then it was immediately absorbed because people were feeling the pain points of the effects of stress in the workplace, and then they were like, can we talk to you? And I'm like, yes.
And do you assess it as the health of the corporation or the group, or do you assess it as each individual and how they affect each other? How all the pieces of the puzzle affect each other? How did you assess it?
All of the above, because it's not one individual that is affecting the group. It's the dynamics of everyone involved, right? It's from the top leadership team to the guy in the warehouse or the guy in the mailroom, right? So it's about team culture and development, which is what I assess and I kind of train on, as well as the individual coaching. So I kind of combined individual coaching with culture development within a company, because I think it's important, right? You address the individual, and in that work that you're progressing with here, that is starting to affect the team. So you have to make sure that everybody's kind of cohesive in that program, so to speak.
I guess the best way for me to understand it, I'm thinking a dysfunctional family. Whenever you have a dysfunctional family, you can assess the individual, but then you assess as a group how we operate.
Correct.
And leadership, which is usually trickles down.
Correct.
When it comes to that.
And we all, listen, I'm not fixing dysfunctional. I'm just teaching how to get along in those spaces, because we never fix our dysfunctional family. We just figure out what's the best way to work cohesively in the family. So I take that mentality and apply it in the corporate space.
And then also, I know that you mentioned this, also the incentive of the better leadership.
Yes.
For those that are handling the the family or the corporation.
Correct, because it's everybody plays an important part in that process of growth, of development, right? It can't be like, let me fix the employees and then I'm going to continue to be, no, it does start with leadership. But then, how do you marry those two, processes, the new development of how do you approach your team versus how they absorb and how they show up as your team.
So, knowing in a very quick outline of what you have done and coming from where you come from, how does Erika feel that she is today? Who is Erika today? How do you want people to know Erika today?
I just said this the other day. I feel whole and complete, if that makes any sense. And I'm not 100% whole and complete in the sense that, because you're always growing. But man, when you walk around with peace, when you walk around knowing that what you set out to do is actually doing, right? You're helping people. When you get reactions from those aha moments from my clients where they're like, man, I never thought of it that way. Like those moments are like what makes me happy today, and I should say that I also took the responsibility of building the life that I wanted to live. And it's not perfect by any extent of the imagination, but it's imperfectly perfect for me. Like for me to have peace and happiness and enjoyment and fulfillment in the things that I do, even when they go wrong, that is who I am today.
What gives Erika peace?
What gives Erika peace?
I need to know that.
Sometimes Prosecco. Prosecco helps.
I know
Sometimes 2 glasses of Prosecco gives me a lot of peace. Wow. No, what gives me peace is to be able to feel fulfilled in what I do during the day, and then to be able to go home to my family that embraces me in everything that this is.
When you say everything fulfilled in the day, I literally picture, because this is Erika's style, which is also my style, is a checklist.
Yes.
So
It's a mental checklist.
And checking it gives you peace at the end of the day that you accomplished that.
Yes.
I think it's very important, especially for somebody that, if somebody comes to figure out what inspires them out of your story, is that you can take baby steps.
Yes.
And those are baby steps, right?
But it's the baby steps that take you there. We're not in a rush. I have, like I said, my son, he's an overachiever. Have no idea where he got that from. But he's an overachiever, right?
No.
And so he has, in a span of 5 years, right out of college, has accomplished what it takes most people 10 to 15 years to acquire. And then now he's up like, now what? And I'm like, now what is that you slow it down? You have to slow it down. It's not about taking the big chunks and then getting there, because then the question is, now what? So
Misorino.
yeah. So for me, it is the baby step process.
Yes.
It's enjoy the fact that you had a small win today. Maybe tomorrow's a big win, then another small one. But it's in that, and I know it's cliche, but it's about the journey. It's not about the finish line. And so I had to have that conversation with him. I'm like, you got to slow it down. Maybe this is a good time for you to kind of like embrace what you've done, right? Yeah, you've had accomplishment after accomplishment, but then now go hike. Go enjoy your life. Go enjoy nature. That's what you like to do.
Take those breaks.
Take those breaks to embrace who you are.
Balance
right?
it out.
Yes.
I have a few closing questions that I love to close for the whole purpose of trying to put it in a bubble, right? I wish we could sell your advice in a little bottle. But if we were to make a movie about Erika, what would be the name of your movie and why?
Oh my goodness gracious.
We can get back to that. I have another question, but
yeah, that's a tough one. Although I
would use the book as a manuscript. I would. There's so much in that book.
Actually, that's what it would be. The voice, because in so many ways that represent. I mean, my book is called Without a Voice.
Yes.
The reason why I named it that was because I felt that growing up, I didn't have a voice. they took it from me. They being a lot of elements that happen, right? But the reason why it's called Without a Voice, A Woman's Journey to Resiliency, is because in my journey, I was able to get my voice back. So I think the movie would be called The Voice.
Okay.
The Voice, because it resonates with the journey of not having one and finding it.
Okay. I don't know if we can call it The Voice with the show The Voice.
The
Can we call it
Voice.
The Voice now?
No, let me get back to that.
Okay.
We got to develop it.
Okay, let's think about the movie name. And then my next question is, I always like to ask, if you were going to go anywhere in the world, if I say to you today, you can go anywhere in the world today that it's a place to give you peace, where would you go and why?
I'd go back to Candirasa, Indonesia. That was, I took a Bali trip a few years back, right before the TED Talk. And I went on a Kundalini yoga retreat. And for me, that was a process of letting go of a lot of the, bag of rocks that I had been carrying. So my aha moments have come in different stages of my life. That one in particular was when I feel like I did the most healing that left me with a clean slate, enough to say, okay, I can go back and start somewhere, but at least I'm not carrying all that. So I would go back to Candirasa,
Okay.
Indonesia, because like even thinking about it right now, I'm like, oh man, I remember feeling what I was feeling when I was sitting there.
I
So,
love when I ask that question, people always give me a place that they have been.
yes.
Not necessarily a new place that you think you're going to find peace. People go to, when I was in that place, and that's how they remember. And then the last question is, if you were to give an advice to somebody in a moment of they're going through a really hard time today, what is the number one technique? Besides going back into your core, somebody's upset or somebody's grieving or somebody, a loss of a job or a loss of someone, what tool can you give them to found that grounding, to be able to get into your core? What techniques, what tools, what words, what did you say?
Honestly, it's something very simple, and I don't know if it's an actual tool as much as it is a permission. And it's giving yourself the permission to ask for help. I don't think that we do it enough. I think we are conditioned to think that we can do it all and that we'll figure it out. And one of the things that I have seen resonate with a lot of individuals when I speak is allowing them to feel that they have the right to ask for help, that we don't have to all be tough. And that's why in my business, I do what I do, right? Because it's that process of taking that first step of, I need help. And I've done it. I've done it with you, where I call you and I'm like, I need help, right?
Yeah.
Or I go to my mentors and my coaches and I say, hey, I'm stuck. And it's in that process of asking for that help that you find the tools you need for that particular situation. So it's giving yourself the permission to ask for help.
I have Erika, or I call each other, where are you?
And that question is like,
That's our
oh
code.
no. I'm like, no, that question prompts the next one. How much time do I have to get to this person? Because I know this is not a short question.
It makes me emotional too about that question many times.
And
yes.
I do want to come back to the movie name.
Okay.
Because I couldn't believe I left it back there. In Her Shoes.
In Her Shoes.
Yes.
I love that.
In her shoes. Because
love that.
until you walk
Yes.
a walk in her shoes, you won't understand where she's coming from. So In Her Shoes.
Do you think it'll be more a movie or a miniseries?
I don't know. We're working on that.
Okay, I'll try to help with that. Well, thank you, Erika. I can't believe that I'm doing this today. We talked about this for so long, and you have been a big influence of pushing me towards the wolf and just letting it be and creating this space to inspire people and to share the incredible stories that I get around my life. And that's part of my blessing. And I feel that sharing stories like yours, if I can also help people through that, then it's a bonus. So thank you.
It was that calling for you.
Yes,
it was your purpose.
That's my purpose, is to share so many incredible stories that I meet on a daily basis of resilience. That's the word. So thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you. We'll put all the information on the podcast, on our service on how to get a hold of her or her book or her tech talk. So thank you so much for being here with me at Open with Alex. And if you like, please subscribe and come back to see more of our great guests and their great stories, inspiring stories. And we'll put all the information how to find Erika's book and Tech Talk on our website. Thank you again, and see you on the next podcast.